Hello, everyone. Welcome to this second and last part of the conversation that we already started. The other day, if you guys remember, we had a conversation about autonomy versus freedom. And the conversation was long, and in that conversation, we discussed a lot of different ideas. We had some disagreements in different ways of looking at the same topic. And in the final part of the conversation, we kind of had two clear opinions, two different opinions about this same topic. On one side, we had Roberto saying there is actually a lawgiver who gives us freedom, and he thinks that's where freedom comes from. And on the other side, we have Omer, who says, well, freedom might be there, but then we are the law makers. As a society, we make decisions and we apply the laws on other people. So that was the final part of the conversation, and we said that there would be a second part. Now, this is the second part. We're doing the second part with my brothers, Roberto, Omer. As usual, I'll give them a couple of minutes to introduce themselves, and then after that, we'll start the conversation. So I'll start with Roberto this time.
Thank you there, Omer. It is my honor to talk with you, to learn, but also to share my opinions.
Right.
Maybe last time I mentioned about a very direct question: who is the giver of liberty? Was the question, or who is the giver of the law?
Right.
In any case, my answer was there is a God who gives it. Maybe my friend wanted to go to a direction of let's focus on it exists. Do not approach the theological perspective and let's intellectually talk about maybe rules existing or freedom existing or autonomy existing. Now how we deal with it. But I still maybe emphasized or focused on this perspective in which I believe that actually there is a law that is eternal, that maybe this time I'm going to say more points about it, but mainly talking about this law, I said that I called it the law of liberty. And
Nice.
boom.
Boom. Yes, that's where the conversation kind of exploded. There's a law of liberty. It's always there. And Omer had a different opinion about this, so I'll give Omer the chance to introduce himself first.
Okay, all right. Very pleased to join you in the second session.
Thank you.
I think we had very entertaining, discussions, intellectually speaking, and even independently paying. You know? I think like last time we talked more on not only on the semantic process. I think
Right.
not only we rely on the definitions and we rely on the other general views about the discussions, but I think today we can go more than the generalization. I think I believe that there is more than the symmetrical perspective. I mean, like there are dimensions when you look at the autonomy, and there is when you look at the freedom, for example. The final part that we come is that there is a law of freedom or the law of liberty, perhaps that can free human from maybe from themselves, maybe from the autonomy itself, maybe from I don't know, maybe from the context of being humanly there. But I would say that still I will gradually is there because the context of or semantically when you look at the idea of the autonomy we say like self-governor, self-dictator, we said a self-legislator, and we said a let's say lawgiver to self. So that's meaning that every derivation is within the autonomy. The human context, the human self, that sound mean that I have to make a decision by myself. I have to make everything processing through myself. So is it that leading to the context of saying that It's moving us to the idea of we are going to be free from ourselves, within ourselves, or we're going to be free from the external forces. In other dimensions, that the freedom, it would say that we, in some ways or somewhere, let's say, there's kind of objective good, but I'm still slithering on the context of, is the autonomy accepts the intersubjective views? When I say the intersubjective views, it means, like, for example, you point for me something that this is bad, subjectively you're saying, and as a human being, do I look at the other subjective views as my own perspective to see that those are the good opinion are being rejected, let's say projected for me, are they good or bad, for example? So I feel still I'm kind of bemusing in the context of saying there is rules that can project the human life and human society. I believe, yes, there are constructions that existed within the society, but those existed to free us. If it free us, then free from what? It's already, yes, theologically, the human, they don't make themselves. I believe that. So the self-creation, it does not negate the concept of saying that there is no God or there is a God, for example. I think there is a God, there is the creator, there is the supreme power probably there, but I'm not sure about saying, like, everything it's watched at surveillance, and the rules are the part of that mission or something like that. So I think it's a very general perspective out there. So I think that we go and move there in that context to make more other sessions, I think, on this context.
But like when you say self autonomy, or maybe autonomy is like being a self dictator, like being a dictator maybe over yourself. You make decisions, you take care of everything, and at the same time you believe that you're just part of this whole complicated thing, this whole complicated universe where you didn't create yourself. You were created, and you're just here exercising some forces that were given to you. Now, isn't that like the same thing that Roberto is saying? Because he's saying there is a law giver who gives you liberty, the law of liberty, and you're exercising that liberty, but with limits. Like you're not the one who's making the decisions. The decisions are already there. You're just exercising them. So, like, I'm not sure if you understand what I'm saying here.
No, I can see. I think even I can reflect the earlier views. We were saying the multiplicity of the choices perhaps can help us to see things. But I think my concept is that perhaps in the societies we have rules. These rules perhaps are meant to be instructed theologically from the God perspective to the humans. And so the supreme power necessarily have to know everything, omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent in general sense. So in that context, am I in the idea that these things for the well-being of the self itself? I'm saying, like, I'm speaking in a very let's say semantic views on the definition of the autonomy, because the nature of the autonomy, it rejects every external forces. Because the freedom accepts all the let's say external forces, or defined from the external forces, the freedom is. But autonomy is much different than that. So when we want to move beyond that, I think I would say, is it autonomy good? Let's have idea of saying, like, is it autonomy good for the humans? Should human being autonomous? I would say the earlier perspective, they say, like, once the education, the capacities, knowledge, experience, ideas existed with the self, able to make those choices and master them in very good ways, I think why not to give a chance for the human self to make their call, and then there would be a punishment for it. Like, for example, we say, like, we die, for example. So what is the after death? Based on the belief perspectives, there would be maybe life, or let's say then probably there would be a resurrection time, or processing to see what has happened in life, or maybe in a mundane level to say that we humans, we are going to abide the rules, and then if someone broke those rules, he's going to be punished, for example. So is it that kind of punishment? Is it punishing the self or not? So I'm saying is that autonomy, let's say, it will be severely bad when the self is not a conscious.
So there is a condition for somebody to be autonomously good.
Yes.
So if you're autonomous but you're not conscious, then you're definitely going to hurt yourself and hurt others, right?
Yes.
Roberto, what do you think? I'm sorry. So first, can you elaborate a little bit on the law of liberty, the point that you were making earlier, and also what do you think? Omer says yes. Okay, what I understand from Omer is this: liberty or freedom is like freeing yourself from the outside forces. So like, yeah, you're here, but then there are other forces that are external, and so when you're free, that means you're free from these external forces. But then autonomy is kind of inside you, but then to exercise your autonomy in a good way, you have to be aware of yourself and you have to be conscious. Otherwise, you won't be able to exercise your autonomy in a good way. What do you think?
Interesting. First, I can say that the law of liberty is a law that is eternal and that comes from God. As God is eternal, there is an eternal law which I can call it is a transcript or is a description of how is God. So these laws, or I call it law, represents what, according with his how he is, his character, he wants that the beings that he created live by. So this is the basic definition. Now, in terms of autonomy, maybe I have a different opinion, but only in some sense, I think. I think that even if there are options, as we said last time, if even in terms of the law, there is a law that regulates and shows us what is good, how we should behave, even from that line of or on the perspective I even presented last time, this law is for our good, and following it, obeying it, we are going to avoid
any evil
consequences, evil or actually the problem that we can see today. But there is more information about it that is definitely very, very needed to explain this point of view. But before that, I was saying about what I consider is probably a little different from Omer's perspective, is that this law or these regulations that exist and maybe are from some or maybe some
Source?
people in the past have considered that there is no freedom if there are regulations or some precepts that I need to follow. Even from without going deep on that subject, I think that the fact that we have freedom of choice, free will, we can exercise the autonomy. So it is not necessarily excluding external forces. To have freedom and also to
have autonomy.
To have autonomy or to exercise the autonomy that we have.
I think, if I may, yeah, I think to have a freedom is to have autonomy. This is the stage. This is just like a beginning of things can operate, you know. But what will happen, for example, like how human rules are existed, or how human come to the idea of we need to live in a society, we need to organize our societies, we need to come and define what is good to the community, and community can follow the instructions. We need to come up and find an idea of this is good, this is bad, or justice, or something like that. Those kind of concepts, I think those are existed not from the perspective of freedom. Those existed from the perspective of the autonomy, meaning that if human, they don't have the self-independent intellectual capacity to able to view things from a different dimensions, the rules cannot become. So that's why I think if you look at the number of let's say those people who are intellectually, scientifically much open, and even they are more humane, I think those are more in the idea of the autonomous levels rather than the freedom. Because freedom is just, I think, for example, like saying that more choice is a more freedom. I think this is the illusions, because this is escaping from one option to another options. There is no sense of mastering what is being taken in the beginning. That's why in earlier what I was saying is that this doesn't make any sense when you say like the more we have the options, the more we have the freedoms. So I say like, okay, what is the point of having more choices, for example? So we come back to the concept of mastering the one choice and then proceeding to transcending it and go beyond the normal level of that option to maybe the level of implementations or achieving the concept itself, perhaps the choice that you take it. I think this is more need to be subjectively and objectively good point. I think this would be motivated not only in the context of freedom, but also on autonomously existed. But let have a clear, more outer understanding of the concept of saying autonomy and the freedom, for example. Assuming like let's say political perspective or the politician ideas, for example. If we say like society has to be governed by politicians, so the politician is the small groups. So I would regard it as the autonomous levels, you know. So meaning that they impose their common interest to the individuals, so they would drive us. And I think this will be more problems because maybe those politicians, they need to focus on their own party interests. They want to focus on their own
autonomy.
You could call it their own autonomy, their own interests, and then they want to force in the society members to follow or abide with their interests. So, do you think it's not good or bad? I think it's bad in this context. So that's why we need to look at the idea of saying that, like having an autonomous level itself. If the individual, they are not autonomously intellectual, I think it would be a problem. So, but do we need to take one dimension and carry on? I think both of them need to be balanced. The concept is the balancing levels, because we have the moral education, we have a civic education, civil awareness, and the freedom. I think even there more on the social liberty, more there, because we need to liberate the society itself from the bleak level of let's say intervening to the maybe social problems, or perhaps there are some evil that existed within the society context. For example, fighting against the corruption, maybe fighting against the evil or bad deeds or something like that. But in the general concept is that to today's level, for example, let's have another perspective about technological influence, for example, in autonomous level. If we say, for example, algorithms. So the 2 or 3 people autonomously, they design something and they influence the entire community, perhaps. So
the entire globe.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So this is good. Like we all drive by the social media algorithms to a specific direction, a specific means. If that's good, you will disagree, and you will disagree. I think it obviously that meaning that if you look at that, the freedom would be like an open subject that it allows this kind of sense could have to be existed. But the antagonistic view on these ideas, I think the autonomy will go against it, because autonomy.